Successful meetings and ultimately successful collaborations are about people, first and foremost. When you can't have everybody in the same room with you, it's important to be able to see them, to be able to interact with them, along with the information that you're working on. The only way that we could make it happen every day is to use GoToMeeting.
I'm Michael Parrish Dudell, entrepreneur, speaker, and best-selling author of Shark Tank Jumpstart Your Business. This is a show about discovery, about showcasing the next generation of business and media influencers. It's new, it's now, it's the next crop.
Hi everyone, welcome to The Next Crop. I'm Michael Parrish Dudell. My guest today is Katrina Craigwell, the head of global digital programming at GE. Katrina has been recognized all over the place lately, including on Forbes 30 Under 30 list in 2014. Katrina, thank you so much for being here. First, I'm jealous of the 30 Under 30 thing, so congratulations, but also I'm a little angry. Forbes didn't call me. So I want to talk about your role at GE. And you see a lot of young people who are excited about tech, excited about digital, and the first thing they do is they go to a startup, right? And you made a different choice. You said, listen, I want to go work with GE. I want to, this legacy company, I want to see what they have, and I want to hear about the decision.
Yeah, sure. So I've been at GE for just over 3 years, and I came from a social media agency before that, where when I started with them, they were actually quite small. I think I was the 17th employee. And for me, I was surprised by the opportunity. It kind of came across my desk. I called my mom, who's like, super serious MBA, super smart, and I think she finally got what I was doing. I kind of thought it would be an interesting opportunity. And when I went into the interview and I started to learn more about what GE did beyond appliances and light bulbs, jet engines, locomotives, power generation technology, these big, beautiful pieces of machinery, I started to get really inspired. I'm a bit of a geek, so I love seeing that kind of stuff. And I went in for the interviews and just honestly, they were kind of brainstorms. We were talking about how do you tell the story of a company that's over 130 years old, that's building massive technological solutions, that has, thousands of researchers, tens of thousands of scientists around the world who are doing the most amazing things. And it's just a fountain of amazing stories. And how can you say no to that?
So I imagine being in the digital space where everything is moving so fast. I feel like every year it gets faster and faster, juxtaposed to a company where it's so large, it has to move a little bit slower. How do you split the difference? How are you successful at what you do while also understanding and respecting the pace of a traditional organization?
Yeah. We're very lucky. The digital brand marketing team, when we were hired about 3 years ago, was hired really from the outside to come and have maybe a slightly different perspective on how we could talk about GE and think about GE. And we had great support from the top. So Beth Comstock, our CMO, Linda Boff, who I work for, always kind of gave us the runway to experiment and try new things, as long as we didn't mess them up. And so one of the first things that I did when I started was run a program where we were training our top scientists and product developers and business leadership to participate on Twitter as external personalities for the brand. And so, we'd get on the calls and we'd go through the training, and they were great. These are fascinating people. And at the end, they'd kind of say to me, are you sure we're allowed to do this? Like, what is Twitter? Who are you? Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
And so, and of course they were, and they were a great representation of the brand, but that culture shift has taken a long time. And 3 years later, it used to be that we'd have to do a lot of work to get access to our factory floors, to film there in the ways that we wanted to, and understand the business objectives and share ours. And now we're very lucky to have the businesses call us, and some of our customers call us and pitch some of the story ideas. So certainly building those relationships over time has been really critical.
It sounds like one of the things you're saying is that in an organization that's large and perhaps has as much history as GE, it's really crucial that the top understands it, so that people who are, if the leaders get it, then the people who they manage have more power. Do you find that to be, is that important for every organization, that leadership really has to understand what they're trying to do?
I think leadership has to value what we're trying to do. At least value, and if they understand it, that's even better. And then I think it's really our job to show the success in the work. So, we have to work really hard and make it happen.
Yeah.
And earn that value every day. And so, it's never, I never feel the success of anything for, more than an hour,
Yeah.
And then you wake up the next day and you're like, what are you going to do next? And so that's our job, is to back them up and show that success day after day.
So the first part is finding the story and developing the story, and then the next part is turning that story into content, which brings us to content marketing. And the world of content marketing moves faster than I think just about anything else that I can see. It's just constantly evolving, and GE obviously cares about it. They've worked a lot in the content space. Tell me a little bit about how content has changed in the eyes of GE from maybe when you came on to where it is now, and what you're thinking about for the future.
So I think, it gets harder every year, right? There's more noise, and what you do has to be more entertaining and more informative and better every single time. I think, every success, the feeling of the success lasts for about an hour.
Yeah.
It's like, great, that went well.
What's next?
The next day I wake up and I'm like, oh my God, what are we gonna do next? And I think, when we started at GE 3 years ago, we were doing things like the GE show, and we still do content in that style. But that was kind of the one kind of stream of programming. Then we looked at Instagram, and we had some great success on Instagram. And now when you look at our suite of digital programming, there's so much more that we're doing. So, at any given time, we could be producing 4 original series. We're producing programs specifically for Vine, programs specifically for Instagram, programs specifically for Facebook and Twitter. And it gives us a lot of latitude to be able to tell as many stories as possible. Because, when we talk about something like GE, it's hard to kind of wrap that all into one story, right? You're doing so much. And so, we might find that our audience on Instagram really loves the photos of our big, beautiful machines, and that's what we do there. And our audience on Vine likes 6-second science experiments, and that's where we talk about science. And so that volume of channels allows us to be able to hit on as many of the story points as we need to get people an understanding of what we do.
So do you think that actually, that might be the future. The future is that brands need to understand not only how to communicate their story and how to develop content around their story, but how to develop content for specific platforms.
Absolutely.
Is that sort of where we're going next? Is that you have to respect the fact that on Twitter, your followers are going to be interested in something very different than your Facebook fans are, than your Pinterest pinheads. I don't know what is the term?
Pinners? I don't know.
Your pinners, maybe your. So is that it? Does a brand need to understand a platform in order to communicate?
100%.
Okay.
100%. And I think for us, first of all, if all the platforms are the same, what's the point of being on 10 different platforms?
Yeah.
There needs to be a value prop for each of the platforms and an experience that is dictated by a couple of things. One is, who is the audience on that platform? So, on Vine, it might be a younger audience that loves science experiments. On something like Tumblr, you get into kind of the fun design, weird science. That's where we get we always get a little bit weird and fun on Tumblr with the brand. Different distinct audiences, distinct experiences, and then the type of content that you post is distinct. So, on Tumblr, images and GIFs get passed around the most. So it's not like we're going to say, oh, well, I'm launching a video and it's going to spread incredibly well on Tumblr. No, we need a YouTube strategy for that. So absolutely, there needs to be a distinct experience across the platforms.
So talk to me about millennials, because you're a millennial, I'm a millennial, we're all millennials. I have a weird relationship with the word millennial, but we often get characterized as especially hard to deal with at work. We value different things, we expect different things. You can be honest. As GE, or maybe you can't, depending on what your roles are, but I'd like you to be. Has GE and does GE treat millennials differently, or have you experienced something different while at GE regarding millennials?
I, too, have a weird relationship with millennials.
I think most smart millennials do.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah.
When I look, the thing that I've always thought about millennials is it's a generation who grew up in a world where no problem was unsolvable, right? To a much greater degree. That might be a slight exaggeration, but to a much greater degree than it had been. If you wanted to understand something, if you wanted to see if something could work, all you need to do is go online and start Googling and, phone a friend.
Yeah. And we were in a time of economic prosperity. You have to remember the 90s was amazing. And so not only did we have the access, but we saw that really awesome, great, wonderful things were just around the corner.
Yeah. It was much more attainable. So I think that, for me, the opportunity to be at a company like GE that's 130 years old, that is doing the work that it's doing, and I'm a little geeky, right? So when I applied to GE, I also applied to sci-fi, and it was like either I'm going for the science fiction or I'm going for like the real science, and I was very happy to go for sci-real, and it's to get to see the world and to walk into these factories and to meet people. I've been all over the world. I spent 2 months in Dubai at the end of last year. In this way is truly special. And so I think there's a level of kind of humility that comes with that, but also, yeah, GE may have kind of long career paths and very specific and for good reason ways that people grow throughout the company. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to show up and do the best work every day and crush it as much as I can. And I think that I give the company and the team a lot of credit, and I'm very grateful that there's a flexibility and understanding there that the world is maybe a little different than it was 2 or 3 decades ago, and we're all in it for the great work, and we also need to figure out how to lift each other up in the right way. So it might be a little bit harder than it would be if I was at a startup or a smaller company.
So you talked about storytelling and the value of storytelling at the organization. Do you feel like this storytelling revolution, for lack of a better word or a better phrase, has changed the business? So in other words, instead of just capturing the story of something that you're doing, are you thinking about story from beginning to end? Is it changing the way that GE runs its company?
On the one sense, when you look at some of the things that we talk about, we think about, and at levels above my pay grade, mind share versus market share, and how do we take something like the industrial internet, for example, and big data, and what that means for our big machines, and what that means for the future of how they operate, and how their customers receive operational data as they're running, and things like that. And even though it may be at a different kind of level of reality across our businesses, it's something that is underway. How do we make sure that our customers and the market know that we're working on this? And so from that sense, yes, storytelling is a crucial tool in order to kind of pave the way for us to offer new solutions. And then I think from a brand standpoint, when we think about all of the things that we can talk about, we have a list every year that changes of the top 10 stories that we want to get across. And it's not just about putting a video out there. It's about something like having people outside of GE understand the impact and value of something like material science on everything from the original light bulb to the next generation jet engine that you're going to see. And so, we just ran a program that we called Spring Break It, where so in order to build materials that can do things like withstand thousands of degrees of heat and operate in desert conditions for decades, you have to take the materials through incredibly tough destructive tests, like almost break them. And so at Global Research, we have a whole series of these tests that an everyday object would get absolutely annihilated going through them. So for a couple days last week, we opened up our labs and we sent everyday objects through those tests. So everything from like a rubber duck to a rubber ball to a baseball, just getting absolutely destroyed, but all to tell the story about what goes into making next generation materials. And so that's not just a video, that was a whole kind of social program and activation. And for us, we think about what is somebody from the audience who's interested in science and technology, what can we give to them that'll just make their day better.
That's awesome. It sounds like you're doing some really great work. Thank you so much for being here. My guest today has been Katrina Craigwell. She is the head of global digital programming at GE. You can find her on Twitter @KCraigwell. And don't forget, if you enjoyed today's episode, visit thenextcrop.com/more, where you can get 5 more minutes of this episode. Katrina and I are going to be talking about what an agency or a partner or anyone that wants to work with GE, what they can do to maybe be a little more appealing to the organization. That's in just a minute at thenextcrop.com/more. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.